All right, so here we are, For You Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew. Behind the ones and twos, we have Michael Kylo Renz, we have Robert, and a very special guest today.
Welcome to the For You Podcast, where we share inspiring stories, navigate life and culture, and highlight church moments. Tune in for uplifting conversations and celebrations of faith, one story at a time.
The man, the myth, the legend, future, was it Country Hall of Fame star?
No.
Brad Stuart?
None of that.
Brad Stuart?
Yeah.
So welcome to the For You Podcast. We appreciate you coming with us.
I appreciate you guys having me on. This is exciting.
All right, so now before we started recording, you were telling us kind of the process of getting your music out. So just for everybody, we have a great conversation with Brad today. You are recording artist.
Yes.
You are a pastor of a local church.
Also true.
And what else do we need to know about you?
I mean, that's about it. I got a beautiful family too, 2 daughters, wife, and yeah, I mean, the music, like we were talking about, there's a new record that came out January 5th.
Okay.
And so it's being released 2 different ways. Obviously, Apple Music, Spotify, all that. But the way that's being released is 1 song at a time over the course of a year. And then there's the physical product, which is you can go buy a vinyl or a CD, and or you can buy the actual digital download of it all. The vinyl comes with the digital download. So I always kind of plug that one. Vinyl's cool to me. Like, vinyl's exciting, and it's a Coke Clear. It's just a beautiful Third Man Records here in Detroit pressed it, and they did a great job. And it comes with a digital download. So there's kind of 2 ways it's being released.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Brad, you gave me one of those vinyls.
I did.
And it is sweet. I don't even have a vinyl player, but I think I might just display it in my office.
Yeah.
I know this guy.
I got a friend of
put this
mine.
together.
His wife called me and said, "Your record cost me $1,800. I thought something was wrong with the website. And so I go to inquire about it. And it was like, well, the record was only $30 online, but then we didn't have a vinyl player or a stereo. So it was another $1,800 in new stereos. So
What's the weirdest thing with all the new media? You get, growing up, we had the record player.
right.
And then you would get, the cassette discs. And then you would get CDs. We're skipping 8-track in there. We're just acknowledge that one didn't exist. CD, and then that's kind of where it stays. You always get you buy everything a hard disk, and you go to Target and you get it, you put it in your car, and then they stop putting the CD players in cars.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. I have all these songs on this, but do I want to rebuy all the digital copies? So suddenly you had that whole new, well, what do I really, really want to rebuy?
Yeah.
So that's
Streaming
changed
changed the game, and without getting too deep into that side of the business. I mean, the whole thing came down to, it's exciting, or was exciting to, for my generation, I would listen to my grandparents' vinyls, but I grew up in the 90s. It was all CDs. And so, you'd go buy the new Smash Mouth record and go get the CD, and you'd wait in line at Harmony House. And, and you'd get it, and you would flip through the packet, and it was exciting, like buying music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to save up. That was like 3 lawns to buy, that I had to mow to get a CD. So it was an exciting investment. And we kind of lost that. Having it so accessible has sort of lost the excitement of it, and people move on from it fast. And so when streaming hit, I was kind of talking to the release team about it, and they said, look, we live in a subscription-based world now, right? Everything, there's a free version of everything and a paid version of everything. And so it's important to me, when I sat down with the team, above all else, the music is ministry first for me. And it always has been, and always will be. And so I wanted to make sure that I would never hold the gospel ransom for $1. At the same time, it takes money to do ministry. And so we want to present the opportunity for people to support it and allow it to go further. So this navigated, area that we're in right now, where the music is accessible for free through your streaming platforms, 1 song at a time. And it helps build momentum, because every 6 weeks there's a new release. So as one song starts to lose momentum, now we're releasing another one. And then on the flip side of that, the people who understand the vision, support the ministry and what we're doing, they have the ability to go spend, $15 or $30 on a CD or vinyl and help keep us on the road and doing live shows. So,
All right, so let me ask you this in the weeds question.
all right.
You always hear people like music picking that first single is the big way to go. So you just going down the track, or you like, okay, let's get the real jammer one out first, and then let's go with the ballad.
Yeah.
And then that's it. So how do you pick that? How do you make those choices?
All right. So I overthink this, and I would love to tell you that there are 10 bangers on this 10-song record, but everybody has their own preference. I sort of went with the title track because you don't do that. And I just had overthought it. I was like, listen, let's go with the first one that got done, the one that the record got named after.
Shameless plug it. What is the name of the first one?
The first song and title track, the record as well, is called 33 Turns in a Needle, which is a reference to vinyl.
Okay.
So what was the heart behind it? Like, what was the idea behind I'm going to write this? And
Yeah. So
that song particularly, I mean.
that song in particular is a testimony. There's a dual meaning behind the song. The opening line is 33 turns in a needle can't say how 33 years of a life feels to waste. I want to come home and I want you to stay. I can't remember the next line, but
Didn't you write this song?
but they change live all the time. But
just we thought about springing it on him to have a guitar here and have him play it live, but we thought
you'd have gotten a live version. So the whole idea is this dual meaning. One is there was a period of time, even in ministry, where I felt like my motivation wasn't right, my heart wasn't right. I was going through the motions of ministry, and I loved God, but I was distracted by the ministry. I was distracted by a lot of the things that, organizations can, in a lot of ways, become idols at times. And I felt like I was in that place. When I first started coming to church here, I was, Pastor Robert was great with pouring into me because I needed a place to rest and reset for a minute. He didn't ask me to serve on the music team. He didn't ask for anything. I was just able to reset. And at the same time, the other meaning is my wife and I were going through major marriage problems at the time. And when we started coming here, we were just hammering through, really in the thick of hammering through a lot of those issues. And so it was sort of this letter to God saying, hey, don't put me on the shelf. Don't, as crazy it might sound, like there was a fear of being cast away. And it was like, I just want to come back. I want to come back to the heart of, there's not a 33 turns in a needle can't say is the idea that there is not a song I could write that could express how badly I want to work this relationship out. And also with my wife too. And so that's for that song specifically. And that was really the first one that got completed in the studio. I've never had a record with a title track. I like to have, records have their own names. And the co-producer on this record just kept calling it that. And it just got coined. And so I was like, you know what? It kind of summarizes the beginning of all this anyway. So we went with it.
That's awesome. Can we play a little bit of that right now?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's throw that up there.
"33 turns and a needle can't say how 33 years of life feels to waste. Now I want to come home and I want you to stay. Take me down from the shelf with purpose for me. And 30.
Okay, so now I'm a 3-chord guitar player,
All right, yeah.
but I fashion myself as, I'm Bono in my own mind, which
Sure.
again, I'm probably as good on the guitar as Bono, not the Edge though. So what's your process of writing? So do you start with lyric first? Do you start with music? Just sit around, just strumming away, humming along? Walk us through kind of the process, because we have a lot of creative people here at the church with our music stuff. I'm sure they'd be interested to hear how you do that.
I mean, the first rule of having a process in music is that there is no process. I don't do anything 100% the same way
Okay.
every time. That being said, most of the time I have a progression that I start with. It usually starts with 3 chords. Usually starts very simple. I'll have something rhythmic and melodic, and then fill in words around it. And then that's when I like to go back to the 3 chords and say, all right, I can't do just 3 chords. Let's throw in, some borrowed chords or whatever. I'm not going to go into the music theory thing, but that's when I go through a write process and then a rewrite process. So if that makes sense.
So now, obviously, you talked about being with ministry, coming up with lyrics. Do you talk about with the first song, but as you're doing other songs, are you doing like a theme of like, all right, let's talk about forgiveness, let's talk about this, or is it just whatever's going on, you just draw from?
Yeah, this record was really whatever was going on. I'm a firm believer that like we as God's people, like Christ encompasses every aspect of life, right? Like a lot of times we look at the Christian music industry and it has to be structured a certain way, or these are the topics we can talk about. These are the untouchables. I don't think anything's untouchable. When you look at scripture, the whole gamut is covered. And so there's a fun song that has some 90s references that I wrote, is just a sappy love song, between my wife and I, and kind of re-falling in love. It's like a 90s kid falling in love with a 90s girl in the most 90s way ever.
Wearing wide leg jeans.
That's right. And so, there's pop culture references, and it's the way we grew up. But like, I had a friend of mine who's in a church who challenged me on it. He's like, well, this is not really a Christian song. And I was like, marriage is like so foundational, and so I think it's beautiful to celebrate marriage. And that's as quirky as we are. We love 90s references. So I really think it's important to be authentic and genuine and allow God to be demonstrated in all the way through your life. So
Yeah, I like that you went to the marriage kind of part, because I think so often in the church world, especially, it's like, well, you got to have, a perfect marriage, and you got to have the perfect family, you got to have the white picket fence. That's like the American church kind of perfect thing. When a church looks to hire a pastor, it's like, are they like 32 years old? Do they have 4 kids? A wife, that's like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, does it fit this perfect mold?
Yeah.
But yet no one's marriage fits that perfect mold, right?
Right.
But what is amazing is on the other side of it in the church, we love to talk about Christ's return, right? When is Christ coming? And what is the picture of Christ's return? It's a marriage. It's the church being his bride.
Absolutely.
And I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Like, he's our groom. And so, yeah, I mean, if our earthly marriages can reflect just a portion of God's marriage to us, shouldn't we be celebrating that?
We should, absolutely. And I think we would probably see healthier marriages even in the church if we had more honest conversation about healthy marriage. We kind of make marriage boring, in a lot of ways. And so
yeah, the idea of a Christian marriage is not exactly appealing to our world right now, right? But it should be.
It should be.
Shouldn't it?
It's exciting and it's beautiful and it's a ton of fun and it's hard. It's really hard. But it's worth it. I mean,
All right, so I'm gonna have to jump in here because I'm sitting here with 2 pastors who obviously you counsel people, you talk to people. What way specifically do you think we as Christians show that marriage is boring? Or what do you come across? I mean, throw me out the stereotypes.
Number one, it's like, do Christians even talk about sex?
totally.
period. Like that's like number one. Like if you're a non-Christian, sex is great. If you're a Christian, it's taboo.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's, I mean, God made
What's the old joke? Sex is horrible. It's gross. It's nasty. Just save it for the one you love.
Oh no, a pastor said the word sex.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, just you know, we've just made it boring.
But it's not only that way. Like I think the Christian marriage, it goes so much further, right? So if you just dig into the book of Ephesians and you look at Ephesians chapter 5, it paints like, hey, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church.
Yeah, what a challenge.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And wives, submit to your husband as if unto the Lord. There's this beautiful companionship between husband and wife. Like I look at my wife and she's my best friend. Like if there's anyone I want to spend time with, it's my wife. And if I think of my relationship with Jesus, if there's anyone I want to spend time with, it's Jesus. And so shouldn't our earthly marriages reflect our spiritual relationship too, right? And so I just look at that because we make it about all these other things, but what the world really is craving is for healthy marriages. And so I find, at least in my life, and I don't know if you see it in yours, is my wife and I love spending time together. And I've met way too many couples that they don't even know how to spend time.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, even the thought of struggling through marriage, right? In so many aspects of the church, and I say church as a big C, not a little c, you know, there's a lot of healthy churches out there, but in general, like it's taboo to talk about marriage problems, you know, unless you're having a specific conference and then, you know,
where you have to go to a hotel at a retreat.
Yeah, totally. Away from everybody, you know, to have any kind of real conversation when it shouldn't be like that. I mean, the church should be a place that where experienced couples who have been through it can mentor young couples. I mean, those first couple years of marriage, you couldn't pay me to go back there. Like once you get past the honeymoon phase and the real bills set in, the real responsibilities set in, I mean, it is a difficult, forged in the fire experience. But we want to paint it out like, you know, you show up to church on Sunday morning, it's like, boy, how's your family doing? Oh, blessed and highly favored. and it's just not.
So I was in ministry when I got married, right? And there were nights that my wife and I went to bed back to back.
Yeah.
And I know her mind was thinking what my mind was thinking. Why did we ever do this?
Yeah.
And I think too often that doesn't get talked about enough, right?
Absolutely.
Like, there are times where you're sitting there and you're like, what did I get myself into? Michael's getting married coming up in a few months, so I know we're really getting him excited for this idea.
Yeah.
He's like, I think I've made a horrible mistake.
No, he didn't.
It's great. It's because I really do believe that the fullness of God in terms of what we can obtain in the mortal self, right, can really be demonstrated and found in the bind of marriage. And so it's worth it. It's worth it. We just have to let people know, like, what you're going through is normal. It is normal to look across and be like, I don't like you. And the answer is not quietly suffer. The answer is not, you know, slowly divorce over time. It's address it head on. I mean, look, I was in ministry while I was separated in marriage, and it was just sad because I had a great mentor who was helping me through certain things and challenging me in a lot of ways to lead my home. You know what I mean? Like that's really where God brought me back to is, and a lot of that was through some advice I got. I'm sure we're not going to make this whole thing about marriage, but the best advice that my mentor ever gave me when it came to marriage was he goes, it is possible and you should worship God and love God through the person, even if you don't love that person right now. Because there was a point in time where I did not feel the feeling of love toward my wife. And and where God brought me to is worship me and love me through her. And eventually your feelings will catch up to that. God's faithful with that and did restore. And now we have a really strong marriage. That doesn't mean we get along or agree on everything, but we have figured out how to disagree and how to navigate that in a biblical way. But it's not easy, and it's not boring. It's exciting, and it should be celebrated. And that's why I like to write about it. Same with raising kids.
So I'm going to you had mentioned something. You had mentioned that you had a mentor in your life.
Yeah.
What was that like? Kind of, can you tell us more about your mentor?
Yeah. So I got saved when I was 17 years old. And I had some really crazy ideas on ministry that were not really ministry. It was just me wanting to combine worldly desire and also figure out who Jesus is.
That frontal lobe wasn't developed yet.
Totally not there. I was half-baked bread, as he would say. So he came along in my life. God put him in my life when I was 18 years old. And over the next, 15 years, we just had a lot of great time on the road together, off the road together. There were times where we got along great and times where we couldn't stand each other. And I wasn't mature enough to see his perspective in a lot of ways. But I would, I'd always end up kind of getting dragged back along. And we had a lot of really honest conversation. I was so fortunate. Having gone through that, I'm such an advocate for always having someone you're being discipled by and having someone you disciple. At the very least, there should be one above and one below, because it was such a great growth experience. And when he went to heaven back in 2021, April 21, it was devastating. At the same time, I had not realized it, but he had really given me the roadmap to to grow and step out of the nest, if you will. It felt like getting kicked out of the bird's nest a little bit, but then you realize, hey, we're flying. It's not pretty, but we're flying. Mm-hmm. So
I know, and I know this just from knowing you a little bit. So your mentor had been in ministry with you, and then you and your family were attending here at Fellowship for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember that season just being crazy for you. And
it was crazy.
I so badly wanted to put you up on stage, but I knew it wouldn't be best for you and your family, which I hope people in ministry know. Just because someone's gifted doesn't mean that they have to be serving in that gifting. Sometimes they need a break from that area so that they can work on their relationship with God. And that's so important. And I saw that happening. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting ready. I'm like, okay, Brad's getting there.
Oh, I was too.
And you're itching, right? And then he's like, I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to start a church. And I'm like, no, right? But it's so awesome because you ended up going and helping start this church with your mentor. So tell us a little bit what happened and kind of what took place then.
Yeah, I mean, I look back and kind of the joke. I remember the first time you and me and Carl sat down in your office, and I was just getting to know the church and what the church believed. And Carl Montfort was the one that introduced us. And one of the things you said is you were like, I want to be a church that plants and sends. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like that's someone who really gets it. Because if we're doing church the right way, we don't always get to keep people. We're here, you grow enough that you can be transplanted out and continue.
I wanted to keep you though.
I hear you.
But that's not what God calls us to.
That was my plan. Then, so in terms of the planning process, so we had been on the road. COVID hit. I think it was March of 2020. We were in Southeast Kentucky and we were loading in and they said, you're going home. Like the world is shutting down. And at that time there was a bunch of political stuff going on. So I deleted all my news apps. I didn't even know there was this going on. I was literally loading in. All of a sudden we're going home. And so what was going to be a 2-week vacation from the road, which was so welcomed at the time, turned into obviously the whole thing that panned out. So around August of 2020, my mentor called me and he said, "Hey, would you want to plant a church with me?" And I was like, 100% no. Like, I'm plugged in here. I'm doing really well, and I don't have the capacity for it right now. Is with my role in that ministry at the time was to get us back out on the road. So I'm trying to navigate that. I'm talking to all these churches and venues, and we're trying to figure out, like, how do we do this? How do we launch again? I mean, this is crazy. So I said that it's a full-time job in and of itself to try to figure out how we get back out on the road. Fast forward, he goes, "Look, just come to the meeting. I just need another person in the meeting." So, all right, so I'll go to the meeting just to appease you, and then I'm going to say no again, and then I'm going to go back to work.
Now, he knew you well enough to know that this was a trap, right?
Well, okay, so he was always one step ahead of me. All right, I mean,
Because he wasn't just saying, "I just need somebody else there." He knew what he was doing.
for sure.
Okay, I just want to make
So,
sure.
Yeah. So I get to the meeting. It's in Royal Oak, and I walk in the door, and man, the Holy Spirit just broke my heart with this place. Like, just so different than anything I had experienced. It just broke my heart. And I was able to meet the pastor that was exiting, and meet the church was down to two little old ladies. And I just heard their heart, and all they wanted to do was preserve the place as a church and for ministry to happen there. So I spent some time. I really wanted to get plugged in here. Like, that was really my plan. And so I spent some time just praying about it. God was moving in that direction. So I thought it was important you and I had a conversation, because I think a lot of people abruptly leave in a not great way.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. And so, I think it's important. I don't want to say it's an exit interview, because we're still talking all the time. It wasn't like a breaking things off. It was just a continuation. My ministry was a continuation of the ministry here, So God called me there, and God was calling my wife there, and so we went and started this, and so we launched. Our first service was in September of 2020. Our official branded launch was scheduled for Easter, April 2021, and the week before, we all got COVID. I went into the hospital. He went in the hospital, and unfortunately, he passed. And I had a kind of a long road to recovery in that process too. And through talking to the board afterward, a couple of the board members were like, "We think you're the guy." And I was like, "Listen, I can tell you unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, I am not the guy. I'm just a worship guy. I was like, I don't have a degree. I didn't become a youth pastor first, and then and then an associate pastor, and then a senior pastor, and then demoted back to, like, I didn't go through the typical, right? It was like, this is not me. But I was like, here's what we'll do. I will help through the process, the interim process. And then God started pressing me. I was like, please, Lord, anything senior pastor. I wouldn't wish that job on anybody. And God continued to break my heart. And ultimately what it came down to is I knew God was calling me to this. But again, talking about the marriage bond, I knew if God was calling me, he was calling my wife to be a pastor's wife. And if I felt he was calling me and my wife was not being called to be a pastor's wife, there's a disconnect somewhere, So I spent some time in prayer, and I said, Lord, I don't want to test you. I'm testing me. I miss my friend right now, and I love these people. I'm trying to keep the people together. Now I can look back and see how God was developing the shepherd piece, because I'm just trying to keep the family together.
Right.
And then I asked God, I said, if you are calling me, I need you to have Liz approach me with this.
All right.
And she did. And so,
Like sheepishly, or was it like, hey, sit down, we need to talk? Or was it more like she just threw out a barb and says, well, it sounds like you're saying this. How did it?
So the conversation really started because I was, at the time, I was also guest preaching at other churches. And Pastor Barry over at Landmark Church in Hazel Park had asked me to go preach over there. So I was not going to be at the Gathering House on that Sunday. I was going to go over to Landmark and preach. And we were on our way out the door, and Liz, my wife, she just looks at me and she goes, I can't go with you this morning. She goes, I hope you're not upset, but I really feel like God's telling me to go be with our people. I was like, it's interesting you're calling them like our people, and you have this heart that's shepherding too. And so that began the conversation. And she was like, I really think that, you might be the senior pastor here. And I was like, okay, Lord, I'm listening now. So I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm glad that I don't know what I'm doing, because whether it's the music or whether it's the church, I literally can't take credit for any of it. Like, this has all just happened in spite of me, not because of me. These last, 3 years now have been a whirlwind of watching God. Like, I have a front row seat to watching what God is doing, just day after day. So
Someone once told me, and it's something I'll never forget, and I've used it over and over, is God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Mm-hmm.
And so often it felt like I have to do this, this, and this in order to be this pastor or to be this certain position. But every time we try to force God's will, it seems like it just is a dead end.
it blows up.
Yeah, but if God just continues to open the doors and we take the steps of faith through them,
Yep.
it's amazing what he does. I remember my first day here at Fellowship. I was given a key the day before, and I was told, good luck. We're going to vote on you, and if you pass, you're our next pastor. So then I get a text that afternoon, oh, you passed the test, you're the pastor. So I walk into this empty building. Like, no one's even here to greet me or anything. I just walk in. I go into what I think is my office. I move some books in. I sit down in the chair, and I go, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Like, you just don't even know, like, okay, what's the next step?
Yeah. Totally.
And then it was literally, there comes this time where all of a sudden I just like broke down, and I felt a weight. There was no one here. I didn't even know what to do. And all of a sudden I felt this weight of God's call. And it was like him saying, are you going to carry this burden yourself, or are you going to let me carry it?
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that I would say, just like you said, Brad, in all of our ministry, no matter where we are, the minute we start taking credit, it's now not a work of God, it's a work of man. And
Right.
that is not a powerful work, but the works of God are incredible.
They are incredible. Over and over again. I mean, it's cool. You've been able to kind of walk with me. The first time we belonged to this Barnabas group, you invited me, and the first time I walk in, and everybody's talking about how long they've been pastors, where they went to Bible college, and like one of the last ones to go. And I'd been a pastor for all of 2 weeks, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing in this realm, and so you've been with me through the whole kind of process, and I can honestly say 100%, like where God brought me to was be about my business, and I'll handle everything else. I will handle everything else. And truly, like, impossible, unbelievable things. If I did not go through it myself, the provision of God through this process has been, I'll probably write a book someday. Like, it's been that crazy. I mean,
Can you give us like a little tidbit? Like,
Okay.
give us a sneak peek.
the church couldn't afford to pay me a salary.
Okay.
And I knew that I was called.
So that's why you got to buy his record. All right,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
The church, but the board came to me and they said, we want to pay you a salary, but we don't have it. And so we want
to. If we had money, we would give it to you, but we don't.
To their credit, they were pushing the issue because I was like, listen, God said go, we're going. We'll figure out dollars and cents later,
right?
But at this point, like I had experienced the call so heavy, like you're talking about, there was no turning back. And so everybody kind of got together and talked, and creatively we came to this place where there was a parsonage. and so they were I was living in an apartment that I really couldn't afford, especially without a salary and all this, and
cleaning CNC machines.
I mean, it was pretty wild there for a while. And I didn't know what we were going to do, but my wife was just rock solid. She's like, we're going to go. And I knew we were going to go. So we just went. And they said, would you be interested in the house? I was like, yeah. I mean, especially because, to back up a little bit, I had been praying for 2 years or so for God to provide a house we could buy on land contract, because in ministry, like banks don't love to give pastors mortgages, and so they're like, so what do you make money on? I'm like, well, God's provision. And they're like, oh, okay, this one's denied. So I had been praying for a land contract, which is virtually non-existent in culture today. So the church was like, we could sell you the parsonage on a land contract.
I was like, score.
I was like, this is amazing.
And then you saw the house, right?
The house. Listen, the house.
No. All right.
Was.
Get settled in here. Let's give you a good one.
Nobody had lived there since the 70s.
Oh, okay.
It had a gravity furnace. Only one room in the house had heat. And
Heat's overrated. It's a mission.
We were moving in February with one room that was heated and no running water because the pipes are frozen. And so we moved, my wife, my daughter, who was 6 or 7 at the time, and we move into this house, and my family is looking at me like, listen.
And suddenly you're wondering, the board might not have been that generous in offering us the house.
I was so stoked about this because I was like, I just prayed for a land contract and I got it. Like, God provided this, and it was through the ministry. I'm excited about it.
Okay. Your wife, not so much. Carry on.
She was like, okay, we're gonna, we'll make it out. And my wife is so, man, she's a saint.
Okay, hold on. So let's do a quick pause. We'll cut this out if we need to. So you got the whole family in the house with no water.
Yeah.
How close is the house to a 24-hour gas station?
We were right next door.
All right, perfect.
To the church.
Oh, to the church. Okay, so
yeah. So listen, twice now we have had to go and use it, because even this year the pipes froze or whatever, but it was no big deal because God had it anyway. But so it was so wild. So we got through that. We move in February, got the pipes unfrozen. We figured out once they were unfrozen, if we just trickle the faucets, they'll stay running. So we're doing that, and then summertime comes around, then it's getting cold again, right? And when it's getting cold again, our gravity furnace goes out, and so we have no heat, and we got to keep the water going. All that in that process of time, Pastor Doug Smith, he came along, and he had heard the story through Pastor Robert. And I think the whole thing started because I was experiencing some burnout at the time, and we had an opportunity to go on vacation, but then we hit some unexpected bills. We were about to bail on our vacation, and our Barnabas group got together and just put together some funding with Pastor Doug, and they sent us on this vacation.
So your Barnabas group, that's what, a group of local pastors, you guys get together? Okay.
Yeah, they're it's like a therapy session. So it's so great.
Pastors need that.
So
it's like a support
little plug for Barnabas Ministries.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging one another, right? And so often pastors are in it alone. So who do you have when
Yeah.
you don't have a pastor yourself. Everyone has a pastor they can lean on. Who's your pastor? And so we get together once a month, and we usually read books or kind of work through different things. But then we also are there to pray with one another, support one another. And it got started because Pastor Doug, when he had retired from leading a larger church, he actually then went and tried getting these groups started. So we started a group right here in our area, and it's been awesome to see the just encouragement. And so Brad has been a part of that group, and is one who's always encouraged me. And so, we got together and we just supported. Hey, so often in ministry, I was thinking about this just the other day in our church context. So often in ministry, pastors, they don't last more than 4 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's because the first 7 to 8 years of ministry, especially at one church, are really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is we don't want to go through the times of how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to get through these challenging situations? And we don't let God just provide for us, right? And there's other dynamics, and I don't want to dismiss those, but when you push through and you remain faithful, it's amazing what God does on the other end. Yeah. So back to your story, you're pushing through, you're remaining faithful, you're burning out, and we're like, we can't let another pastor burn out. Too many of them. Well, there's not enough. We need to keep Brad going. So we rally around you, and then what happens?
Yeah. So these guys got around me, sent us on this vacation to South Carolina. I'm telling you, it was totally just recharge the batteries. I get back, and Pastor Doug came over to the house, and he brought his wife, and they were just like looking at where we were living, and Pastor Doug was like, "We're gonna make some calls. Like, you can't live like this." And
the call is not to the city ordinance.
No, but I mean, there were so many. It'd be too many to name, but like there were so many businesses and individuals and pastors and churches that just got together, and whether, like, long story short is we ended up having our whole house renovated. Like, God just used the church, big C, to meet our need. Like, it wasn't because of anything I did. I didn't make some mogul financial move. I was like, okay, Lord, let's go. And my wife was like, we're going to pursue the call of God. We're going to pursue God's business and let him take care of our provision. And that's where he's always been. He's just always been ahead of our provision. During that time, our furnace went out. And this is like to show you how awesome God's timing is. It was hunting season. It was November because I was in a hunting blind when my wife texted me. She goes, skunks got in the crawl space and sprayed. And the house is like uninhabitable. Now, we were supposed to get our new furnace installed in October, but it got pushed out until, I think it was January or February. And it was just enough time for all that to get sealed up, vented out. And like, had we gotten that installed in October, we'd have had all this skunk in the new furnace system. I mean, it would have been a disaster. So God just has been one step ahead of every step of the way. So listen, nobody can tell me about God's provision. Like, you just be about his business.
And I think that goes to show the kingdom focus. And what I love is in what God is doing through your ministry and what he's doing through you and Liz in your church is I think it's the kingdom of God being shown, right? So there's no church taking credit for anything. There's no pastor taking credit for anything. It's just church is saying, how do we be the church? How do we encourage one another? How do we build one another up? How do we help support this ministry in Royal Oak? And so tell us a little bit what's been going on at the Gathering House and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, kind of going along with this, I got a lot of young believers, and not necessarily young in age, just people who are really new into their faith walk and have been able to walk with me through our journey. And so they're kind of like watching what God's going on. And so it's, believe it or not, strengthened their faith about God's provision. And so there's a church down the street, and how many of us like, and I don't understand why, but there's so many churches who think we're in competition with one another instead of having a kingdom mind, but there was a church down the street that is a mile from us that came and just started swinging hammers in my house. You know what I mean? And they were great. So our church got to see that, see some real, I call them war dogs of the faith, who've been through it, are kingdom minded, and just digging in and making bigger things happen outside of the walls. Now we're starting to see a lot of the fruit of that. Got people who came in off the street 2 years ago that there was a family in the community, just recently, who they didn't go to our church. We got wind of them through a friend of a friend, and they had no heat. And our church immediately was like, we can provide a furnace. You know what I mean? And so now these people, and again, it's not me, it's just them going out and seeing a need and filling a need. We talk a lot about how obviously, salvation is by grace through faith, plus nothing minus nothing. Finished work of the cross. That's it. But like our piece of it, and I'll never talk you into salvation, right? That's the Holy Spirit's job. I share the good news, but that's the Holy Spirit's job. But what I can do is provide a meal. I can make sure that your house has heat. I can, I can make sure you have a drink, you have clothes on your back and things like that. And so what I'm most excited about with the Gathering House is that the people have such a heart for meeting the physical need to open the door for the spiritual need. And it's beautiful to watch. They're just great people. And, we keep getting new people, and it's exciting. It's been a really humbling thing to watch grow.
Now, the Gathering House name.
Yes.
Did you inherit the name? Did you pick the name? What's the?
No, it used to be.
Churches now always have like trendy names. They're normally like Move or Peace Church or there's Gathering House. It's very distinct.
So the church that we inherited was Memorial Free Will Baptist Church.
Okay,
which was
a good name.
It's
lengthy.
It's lengthy.
Memorial Free Will MF
and we're
MF.
Yeah, too many letters.
We're not gonna go with that one.
So when we were talking about kind of rebranding, if you will, we had kicked around a lot of different ideas, and we looked at the demographic. It's Royal Oak.
Yeah,
it's
very diverse. I do a lot of work in Royal Oak, so I'm familiar with it. It's
very diverse,
very posh areas and very blue collar areas.
Yeah. So, my wife had thrown out. She's like, when we were all sitting around, the question was posed, and I don't remember who asked it, but it was like, well, what do we want this place to be? And someone said, a place where people can gather and hear the good news and experience God, a real hope, a real belonging. And my wife was like, it's just a house where people gather. It's a gathering house. And we all just kind of, as much as we were trying to be trendy and come up with like a cool name, we just kept coming back to the Gathering House because it had a very Book of Acts image. They would just gather, and then the Holy Spirit would show up, and it was just crazy. So that's kind of how that happened.
Very good.
That's my wife came up with that one.
All right, so for you now, so are you worship leader and lead pastor?
I am not.
How does this work?
Yeah, so
I did go on the website, looked around, I didn't know how up to date it was. I was like, okay, so the musician's not the lead worship guy, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so
walk it down. Give us behind the scenes stuff.
In little disclaimer, the website
because you wanted to be the key worship leader as well too when you came, didn't you?
Yeah, with my tone deafness and lack of musical ability.
All right, go on. All right, so
the website is not totally up to date, and there's a reason behind that too.
Okay,
but we're getting there. Long story short, I came on when my mentor was the senior pastor. Yep. I came on as worship leader. in the process of time, when everything was kind of switching over and he went to heaven, it was really important to me to not wear all the hats, because we can try to make pastors like the Tom Brady's or Patrick Mahomes of a church, where it's built around a franchise guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not want that. My goal, honestly, is that someday, if when I go to heaven or we hire a young gun and I'm old, I really want it to be a seamless transition because it's not built around me. So that was a major factor for me choosing another worship leader, who's Phil Campbell, I've got 17 years of playing, road experience with him, and he's a phenomenal musician, really rock solid in the Bible, and a guy that I really trust. And our whole team are road proven, just rock solid people. Any one of them could preach, if you put them in a scenario where they had to. So that was important to me, and I wanted to also just differentiate the roles a little bit, and I wanted to focus and develop the pastoring piece. You know what I mean? Like, that was a new role for me. I already do music out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
This is an opportunity for me to step back from another hat and just really get into the craft, because it has to be God led, it has to be God driven and appointed. But I do believe that when God calls us, we have an element of responsibility to develop also in our gift, and in the calling that God's given us. And so I'm really trying these last couple of years to develop as a better speaker, as a, just get better in my Bible and learn what shepherding really is, because it's so much more than preaching on Sundays. The 30 minutes of preaching on Sunday is actually probably the easiest part of the week, because you've done all your prep at that point. But it's the study, it's the house visits, it's the hospital visits, it's the funerals, it's the marriage counseling, it's everything else that's based around serving the flock that I needed to be able to develop and still do. So I got another worship leader. Long answer for a short question.
All right, so as we're starting to wrap up, we'll do this. We'll want to know where we can get your music, where we can learn more about that, and then we'll switch over to ministry. What can we do to pray for you or help support your ministry? So you can go with whatever direction you want to go with either of those.
Okay, so the music, accessibility, road dates, finding it, whether you want to get a physical copy or find it online, all roads kind of go through bradstuart.com.
Yeah.
So
Stuart.
That's right.
Same as the 2020 or 2000s Red Wing defenseman.
That's right. So that was.
Wait, are you at the 2000s?
Yeah, that's me. So I do remember when he got drafted to San Jose, though, because I was devastated. I want to be a Red Wing, and here I am getting drafted to San Jose. So, but yeah, so bradstuart.com, that's where you can find all the information on the music stuff. The website for the Gathering House, mygatheringhouse.church, I believe. Pretty sure it's down right now because we went through a season where we pulled streaming off.
Yep.
To try to build up the body.
I clicked on some of the links, and although I wasn't able to download I was like, oh look, their doctrine, their statement of faith. Right, there we go. Yeah. I was like, oh, look at that.
So that is there. We also have God Alive Ministries, which is our website where we take in, it's called God Alive. It's godalive.org. And if you want to support, the ministry that we're doing out on the road, so yeah. So,
and now for the church ministry.
Yeah, church ministry.
What can we do to pray for that, support that?
Yeah, so I mean, just be praying for continued growth. And I'm not talking outward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking depth. You know, if we bring in more people outside, great. But you know, everybody's welcome. But we're going through a season where we're really trying to just dig in and make sure that those roots go real deep. And everybody knows, not just, you know, what are you? I'm a Christian. Well, why? I don't know. My grandma was like, why do you believe what you believe? Let's challenge it all. So we're really digging in on that. So just be in prayer for that. And
do you find it generally receptive there in Royal Oak, or antagonism? What's the tone and tenor of the people, because when you interact with people who live in the area, what's, you know, because in some areas you go to, everyone's maybe nominally Christian or nominally familiar with it. Other areas, it is more antagonistic. What's your general experience there?
I would say Royal Oak as a whole is non-Christian.
Okay.
But that being said, with our focus on, you know, we went through a season where it was a lot of people were trying to convince other people why you should be a believer. And we've shifted culture in the church. I don't have to convince you why Jesus. I'm just here to tell you what Jesus has done for me, and make sure that your belly's full and that you have food and water and you're warm. You know what I mean? We visit you in prison. We visit you when you're sick. If I can do those things, and if you can experience Christ through me, I trust God to transform the heart. I can't transform the heart anyway. So where we initially got pushback, because we did have some antagonistic, you know, people coming by, we don't have the pushback outwardly anymore. And more of the community is starting to come. There was a point in time where 90+% of our people were traveling from outside Royal Oak. And we're probably to a point where 60 to 65% of our people now are residents inside the city. So, you know, God's moving there. I just don't, excuse me, I don't count nickels and I don't count necks. That's something God has placed on my heart. I've never taken an attendance. I've never counted an offering. I know that our bills are met every month, and whoever shows up is who God's ordained to show up and is moving there. So that's it.
Very good. All right, Robert, any closing thoughts?
Hey, no, I just want to say thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of our podcast. Brad, thanks for coming in and doing this. I know I don't just consider you a pastor, and I consider you a friend, and I love getting to do ministry alongside of you, and it's been fun to watch what God is doing through you, through Liz, through your church, and hopefully people can really resonate with your music, because I think you're trying to help share what Jesus is doing in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through a different means than what is typical. And I think that's awesome. So maybe more people will be making $1,800 vinyl records. But if you like this stuff, please like, subscribe, please follow, comment. We'd love to hear from you. Brad, is there any last things you want to leave us with? Any ways we can follow you, get to know you more, anything like that?
I just appreciate you guys having me on, and love what you guys are doing. The ministry here is so near and dear. So I just appreciate you guys. And if you go to bradstuart.com, all the links to everything else you're trying to get to would be on there. So just do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the best is yet to come. So, hey, we'll catch you next time.
Take care.